They say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That is exactly what we are doing here today, going behind enemy lines next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Wednesday, so you know what that means. Behind enemy lines. I got my guy Brandon here from the Hawks Nest, or the Seahawks Nester. Man, you are growing over there. You guys are up close to 9,000 subs over on the YouTube channel. That's awesome, man. I remember we did this show. Gosh, it's probably been close to a year for us anyways. You guys have grown quite a bit, so congratulations to you, bud. How you been?
Thank you. I seen the same on your end, and doing really well. I mean, life is good. We're in first place, so it feels pretty well right now, considering what we thought we were going to be walking into this year. But it's great to be back on your channel, man. I had a great time last time talking shop with you on this stuff.
Absolutely. I have to ask you, right? Because again, we joked about it backstage. We said, hey, this is exactly how we planned it, right? Seahawks are in first place after week one. That's how everybody saw it. You said the season's boring now because we knew this was going to happen, but
yeah, it's all scripted.
But right. At the same time, though, I got this feeling that I don't know if it's good to win, right? Like, not that you guys want to tank, but you want to be in the best position to get your future quarterback. So how do you feel about that whole situation? Like, as a fan, like, how does that, not that you want to root against your own team, but same time, like, you know.
No, it's a valid question, because it's a lively debate out in amongst the 12s right now about what they should do coming into this season, to tank or not, to be competitive or not. My argument for it kind of goes deep with it a little bit, in the respect of, when you get into a state of tanking, be careful, because you can end up eventually there in perpetuity. And the theory that you're just going to tank 1 year and flip a light switch, and then the year after that, you're going to be suddenly good after doing that, and asking the players to go from essentially knowing, because you can't lie to the players, that they're not truly trying to go for it, that you're just kind of getting through this year. Can't lie to those players. They're going to know, and you're going to get that mentality in play. You're going to get that in the culture, and it's hard to root it out, and simply in a year to do so. The second part that impacts this is going to be the picks. We have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. So we have a lot of ammunition to trade up in the draft. It doesn't really matter where we're at, because you can put future first-round picks on top of those picks if you really want to go get your guy. As you guys know, I shouldn't have to explain to you guys. You guys did this very same thing. So, and I'm not anti that. If you got a guy you like, if you lock in on your guy and they want to do that, then that's fine. So none of that holds you back from trying to compete this year, in my opinion. And no, you want to establish a winning culture. You want to tell people it's not acceptable for us to lose here. And you have to keep that, you got to keep that nose to the grindstone, so to speak, to keep that mentality, in my opinion.
Do you think Pete Carroll, if they just came out and, let's say, won 2 games this year, do you think there's any chance his job's on the line, or do you think he's secure?
Well, you're going to hate me for this, because like so much stuff's complicated, but that's this. Yeah. Everything's kind of a Russian doll right now in Seahawks land, because everything's kind of, well, you got to pull this layer out and pull this layer out. It's related back to the ownership. It's related back to the Paul G. Allen Trust dictates basically the Seahawks team needs to be sold sooner than later. But not sold like in the next year, but it's going to be sold. This is going to impact decisions where, if you just have signed a coach not a year and a half ago to a $40 million extension and release him, coaches aren't like players. Contracts are guaranteed. You're paying that. You're probably letting go the general manager, who you also just signed to a contract extension. So you're going to have to pay that as well. I know it's for billionaires and whatnot. Well, who cares? They're a billionaire. Why do they care? Because Jody Allen, the owner, has been dictated by this trust to liquidate everything. Everything must go. Everything needs to be in cash, not spend out of pocket on these things that need to be spent out of them. So that impacts this. And it could impact that decision, where even if it was to the point where obviously Carroll's not the guy, we need to move on, this isn't the right one, it still wouldn't come down the track, I think, or it would be still hard to be put down the track because of these outlying situations.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Dave Barclay comes in and says, hey, Jesse, I just told you I don't want to watch your show. I was just on the show with Grant. Well, here I am. And as always, you're killing it. Let's go defense. I appreciate it. Well, Dave, since you are new to the show and you were stubborn and coming over for whatever reason, we do something a little bit different over here. We give thanks for anybody that does a super chat. And here's how we do it. every time, every single time. All right, let me ask you this. So we just talked about should they tank, should they? There's so much that goes into it. Pete Carroll is his job on the line.
Mhm.
When the season started, Brandon, what was your record prediction for these Seahawks?
7 wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's built out of a lot of stuff to it. We talked about last year, the offensive modifications we're bringing on last year, that to get a good return on your offense, you've got to wait till year 2. Your own coach Shanahan went to the Falcons, and in his first year as an offensive coordinator, crapped the bed. Didn't do too good. Had a lot of friction with him and Matt Ryan. By year 2, they were humming. Matt Ryan went on an MVP season. So you usually have to wait to year 2 to start to see a lot of those returns on a new offensive scheme. And remembering, we're taking our scheme from the late 1980s, right? Shoddy ball type stuff that we were playing before, and we're modernizing it now. So you're going to get returns on that, even if you don't have epic quarterback play. The other side of this is that they took those same turns this offseason with the defense. We have been a staunchly 4-3 under defense that wants to play a predominant amount of cover 3 at like a 90 to 95% rate. The twist of the turn over the last couple of years has been to move to more cover 2 type stuff. But that's it. It's cover 3, cover 2. Cover 3, cover 2, cover 3. So now finally this offseason, we're adopting the de jure Vic Fangio cover 2 shell defense, which is a little bit more not a little bit more unpredictable. It's highly more unpredictable. We're going from the most predictable defense in the league to a defense that has it's not up there with Wink Martindale type stuff, but it's very close to being one of those defenses that's a little more exotic, a little bit more hard to prepare for. You don't know exactly what you're going to get and where it's going to come from. So a lot of this is the building block of them finally updating. It's like going from DOS and finally buying a new machine versus again going from like a sideways deal, right? If you have a coach that's got a modernized offense and running it, and you're looking to change direction, but the other guy you're bringing in the same modernized deal, you wouldn't expect as great returns from that. But because we're going 3 decades forward, my man, I'm giving it a little bit of juice.
It's so funny to me how the NFL does this. They always make these sweeping trends together. And what we saw last year was Patrick Mahomes really struggling with 2 deep shell, right? Open concept shell. And this year, the NFL is just swayed from having 1 deep safety, which they've done for years, right? Seattle made that popular, by the way, and everybody started to copycat. It's a copycat league. And now everybody's going to a 2 deep shell. It's just crazy how the NFL has these ebbs and flows as if these things haven't always existed, but everybody does it all at the same time. It's interesting.
Totally. I mean, Fangio's been doing it with this defense since the 90s, but it's you're right. I think some of it is that, to me, this is the part I love about football, is that it's not a stagnant sport. It's not going to play the same way 10 years now to 10 years forward or 20 years back. It's always got this evolving process to it. And that's what you get back to getting to this Fangio scheme and why it's kind of coming along. I mean, it is given Russell a ton of problems here with the LA Rams. And that's what Staley was running for years. They've kept running it there. And again, it's not a coincidence that you see a guy like Wilson and Mahomes affected by it in that way, because it's a defense that's not going to let you hit the deep ball. It's not going to make it simple and easy for you at the same time. And that's a differing concepts that usually are, I think, separate of each other rather than going together as a defensive philosophy. So it's just the evolution. We'll get back to cover 3 at some point, I'm sure. We'll get back to man-based heavy blitz stuff at some. It'll be 46 Bears defense stuff. I mean, it'll all just keeps on spinning. They just keep on spinning,
What was the pulse of the fan base when you were doing shows and predicting 7 wins? Were you getting a lot of pushback or?
No, the 12s have been very, I've got to give my people, I mean, look, I'm obviously not going to throw shade at my people, but I got to give them credit here where they've been very level-headed for the most part. We've had people that are certainly upset with the Wilsons thing, and they had come up as Wilson fans, and that's when they had become Seahawks fans, is right at the time that, younger fans. And so some of them are having a harder time with it, but overall people are okay with the rebuild. They're okay with buying into it. The place they don't want to be in, as far as, not to speak for everybody, but the general feeling I get is you don't want to be caught in between. I have a new theory I've developed on this, is that you've got 4 states as a football team, and that's rebuild, ascending, in between, and elite. Your team right now is one I would put into the elite status of things. That's where your team is at. And it's important to know where you're aligned, which box you're in, to then have that inform your decisions on what you need to be doing next. Do I need to be going all in? Do I need to be dialing back? And the worst place you can get, man, is that in-between phase. It's like in the middle of a river where there's a whirlpool, and you just get stuck in the whirlpool and find yourself there in perpetuity. And they're seeing that they're not doing that this offseason. You cut all the dead money away. You made some tough decisions. You pulled the Band-Aid off fast. And I think that does at least get them some hope here that we're doing this the right way or trying to move this in the right direction.
What you just said was music to 49er fans' ears, but the front office does not take an all-in outlook with this team for whatever reason. And that is something that was very frustrating to 49er fans in the offseason, is they're saying, look, the Rams do everything they can to go all in at all times when they are close. And the 49ers have not done that, right? And so that was a major frustration. I mean, they had a lot of money with Jimmy Garoppolo sitting there that they could have gotten rid of at any point, even if it was by cutting him. And the interior of that offensive line, they lost a lot right there. And not having proven veterans there is already starting to show its face a little bit. So it's interesting that you say that, because I agree. I think the 49ers are there, but part of that, to your point, is recognizing where you're at and knowing when to pull and push on these levers. The 49ers thus far have not played this the way that a lot of 49er fans wish that they had.
No, it's a salient point on your part. I spent the last 3 years with smoke blowing out of my ears because my Seahawks, as they were going through Russell Wilson's prime, were taking these same sort of, we've got a 3-year plan approach to things. I don't want to hear about your GD 3-year plan. I want to hear what you're doing now while we're in our window. I don't know if we're in our window 3 years from now. The NFL shifts faster than the wind in San Francisco. And you need to know where you're at and strike while the iron's hot. And you can bitch and moan about the fact the Rams spend all their money and play the cap games that they do. And you can bitch and moan about the fact that you've been in the toughest division in football going on probably about the last 3 or 4 years, maybe not this year, but that it has been that case. Or you can go, look, the waters are cold. Let's adjust. This is what it is. It's not changing. The Rams aren't going to stop spending money there. They're trying to make themselves a thing in LA. I don't think it's going to work, but they're going to keep trying.
Right.
And so God help them. You've got to match that energy if you're in that spot. And I wouldn't tell your 49er faithful they shouldn't be. They should absolutely be pissed. You don't get to these places often. And when you're in that place, go. Now's the time.
Yep. I'm with you. Give us a Seahawks player that maybe the masses don't really know, but will either learn more about or should know about because they are an ascending player or just an underrated player for y'all.
It's a good question, because there's a couple guys that are definitely jumping out. How much on my certainty mark do you want to go? Because I probably have 3 or 4 guys, but it's more about, do you want a guy that's like going right now and he's good to go, or for like what he's going to be in the future?
Let's give 2 players. Let's give one a future projection, and let's give one that you think on Sunday is going to flash possibly. And we're like, exactly. Hey,
there we go. So the guy that I'd go first off out the gate would be the defensive player of the week, which is Uchenna Usu. And don't ask me to pronounce his name again, because I don't like pronouncing it. I can't learn it. I'm getting too old to pronounce certain things because my mouth can't just get the words out. Look, I love what I saw. We had a brief moment of him in preseason, and I went so kind of fanboy on it that I went to the All-22 and did a cut-up of him this preseason where he had like 2.5 series, but he was dominating those whole 2.5 series in the opening preseason. And then he came out in this week against Denver. He got player of the week, defensive player of the week in the NFL, 9 tackles, a sack, pass defensed. He's really a smart player, and he jumped out to me as one of those signings they made in free agency out of San Diego. The Charger fans weren't happy to get rid of him. High pressure guy that wasn't getting you a lot of sacks. And so I thought, okay, we're getting a rotational pass rusher type, but then you watch the tape and he's really good against the run too. Sets the edge, smart, understands what his responsibilities are. And so he's a guy to me that from the moment I've watched him play has stood out. And I wasn't surprised in the least to see him then go get that player of the week. And Tariq Woolen's the one you're going to have to worry about long-term. That's going to be the one for you guys that you give Coach Carroll, who's a cornerback whisperer. I'm not saying he's got all these positions he's great at. Okay. I'm not trying to overstate my coach, but the one thing he knows how to do is bring along cornerbacks. And he has had 4th, 5th round, 6th round, undrafted. And now you've given him the greatest mold of clay to work with from a physical standpoint that he's ever had. And you don't think with Sherman in this kid's ear week after week, you don't think this kid's going to come forward, who's already vaulted to the starting position as a 5th round pick? Look out. Look out.
I have to be honest. When you guys drafted him, I knew immediately. I'm like, gosh, damn it. That was a steal. This kid's going to be really good, especially with the Seattle Seahawks. I knew it immediately. I'm glad that you brought him up as a projection because he's so athletic, he's so big, he's so physical, he's so fluid, and like you said, he's raw because he did come from a small college, and he's so moldable. And Seattle does a great job with the corners. They always have. This kid, you're right. I'm with you. That's a great name.
He's only been playing cornerback 2 seasons.
Yeah.
He switched from which receiver in college, and he's starting in the NFL in his first game as a rookie, only having played the position for 2 years. I didn't project. I liked the pick a lot when we selected him. I thought it was a great steal for the 5th round, but I said, this is going to take us a year. When you watch his tape, he's got some false steps he takes. Cause what you talk about is I can't teach what you just talked. I can teach all the other stuff. I can't teach any of the stuff that you just mentioned. And if you got all that in your bag, and then you got the work ethic to drive yourself forward, to vault yourself into the starting rotation by game 1, when there is some good competition. I mean, we don't have elite guys, but we had Sidney Jones here, Artie Burns, who had his best year in Chicago last year, Kobe Bryant, who was taken in the 4th round ahead of this kid. There were guys there that were competing. He wasn't just given the role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought between him and Kobe, actually, that could be a 1-2 punch that you guys could have for a while. So I hated, because those are names that I looked at and loved the whole time. So I hated the fact that the Seahawks were able to get him, for sure.
I've had to spend the last few years crapping on drafts of my Seahawks in a few years because I'd not liked the way that they've gone approach wise, and it's been rough. This draft was the best draft in 10 years. I know it sounds like I'm overstating it because I'm a Hawk fan. Look, I posted videos that I get me dinged for my fan, because like here's me reacting to LJ Collier the night he's picked, calling him a bust. Here's me reacting to Jordan Brooks hating his pick because it means Bobby Wagner's gone in 2 years, which he turned out to be the truth. And then I get finally a year like this where we're down the board. They switched up this year in that they went BPA all the way. Every year when you've looked at Seahawks drafts in recent years, it's stretch here, stretch there, pull over here. Let's go way out here for this guy because we just fall in love with him so much. This year it was, who's the best on the board? Okay, that one. Who's the best more? Okay, that one. Oh, we took a cornerback last round. Who cares? Woolen's the best on the board. Take him. And they kept that concept all the way through, which I just was so nice to see as a fan.
I kept expecting you guys to take Malik Willis too, and it just didn't happen. And not that you guys made the wrong decision. It's just I thought he would be like the perfect moldable player for y'all as well. And he just kept slipping and slipping and slipping. But, we'll see what they do at the quarterback position.
They're fitting to the 2012 blueprint at this point. So if you want to look to what they're doing, they're replicating what they did 10 years ago. They're taking the same sort of steps that they took there, right? You had a left tackle already embedded in, a high top 10 pick left tackle before you got your quarterback. I mean, this is the thing that I think the Niners did too with what they got with Lance. We can talk a little bit of Lance on whether or not it's the best to get a guy pro ready or not, because the key here for us is pro ready. Yeah. And that what we're trying to build is a team where the quarterback's not going to be asked to do as much like you guys do, but you just want him to do enough. Have legs like a Lance has legs. Be able to make a couple plays in there between them when we ask you to do so, but we're going to lean on all of these elements of our team to get this done. And when you talked about going and drafting that guy, that means the guy doesn't have to be the top 3 pick or the top 5 pick. I need a guy that can manage the game and do it efficiently. And like I said, use his legs, hopefully, because that's a component you need now more than ever. And I think that model works in this NFL. It can work for you guys. It can still work for us. But you've got to understand the model. And that's where when coming back and getting Lance, who I loved, getting the guy that was raw, that was going to maybe take a couple years of development to get there. Luckily, you guys able to retain Garoppolo, at least have some insurance policy there. But that was the part where they kind of lost me a little bit on the choice of just, I loved Lance, but you guys in the position you are get what we're going to do next year. I think you mentioned that guy we get might be, I think there's going to be 5 first-round quarterbacks, by the way, next year's draft.
I agree.
And so you can get a guy in 13, 14, 15. I get a Tyler Van Dyke out of Miami at 17. And he can come in here and run this just fine. I don't need the creme de la creme star of stars at that point to get it done, because I've constructed my team that way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes total sense. Matthew Sanders says, easy Disley. We all know who Disley is. That's cheating, Matt. All right. Let's see here. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, we're good. Okay. Give me a matchup on Sunday that, as a Seahawks fan, you are most confident in.
Oh, Lordy. Most confident in. Give me some time to think about this so I can give you a good answer. I don't offhand. I'm not going to go, well, Cross will have Bosa to this day. I'll tell you that. No. No. I guess I'm going to probably have to go defense somewhere then. I think Darrell Taylor is going to give McGlinchey some problems off the edge.
It's a good pick.
I think that would be my one spot. I think that the corners, the corners out there playing are going to give as good as they're going to get. You're getting up and down moments, just like the tackles. Cross is going to do good against Bosa at times. Bosa is going to make him look silly probably at times. I love Lucas on the other side, but again, you're going to get your ups and downs with rookie guys. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick because McGlinchey, he seems to have a little bit of a limp still. We don't know if he's fully healthy. He is playing. He's not missing snaps or anything, but he's got a little bit of a limp still, missing a lot of last year. He's a guy where his weight has fluctuated up and down. He's trying to figure out what works best for him. And just traditionally hasn't been the best pass blocker in the world. So I think that that's a pretty safe bet that McGlinchey might be something you can pick on for sure.
Weird with McGlinchey too, because his build looks like more of a pass blocking build, right tackle type versus the traditional mauler you might get out of that position, on the norm. And look, last week he didn't have a great game, did Taylor either. He had, I think, 2 pressures, but it was funny. Mitchell Shorts, former Kansas City right tackle, it got to the point he was commenting on this on his Twitter during the game. The officials stopped calling holding on us in that second half on our guys. And there was one play where Taylor gets completely corralled right to the ground because he gets off so fast. He's so quick off the line of scrimmage. He's not refined. He's got a ways to go still. But the one thing with him, he's got a Von Miller-like first step quickness that really stands out with him at times. But he's still really coming along. He's still very much a run. And you guys, the place for you guys to attack, to look for where you guys on the other side should go at, is I go at Darrell Taylor in the run game. I attack my wide zone stuff to Darrell Taylor's side if I'm the Niners and test to see if he can set the edge, test to see if he can hold his ground, because I don't think that he has been able to do that consistently up to this point.
Well, I will say this, somebody who's just a really good speed rusher is what gives McGlinchey issues. So I right on. But yes, attack him in the run. That's the way to do it. I like to hear that a lot. Okay. And maybe that's what you're the least confident in, or maybe not. But what is the matchup that you are the least confident in as a Seahawks fan?
Least confident. Well, Achuna will do okay against Trent's. Not going to make him eat his complete lunch. Achuna will be all right over there on the blind. So I'm not saying Achuna's going to dominate, but he'll be okay. Who would be a matchup there then? It's a good question, man. Guess I'll go offensively. I think Bosa could give Cross some problems. I think Cross could hold up well for all the plays but 4, but those 4 bad plays turn into 3 sacks. And this is a tough test for this kid. He's 21 years old coming out. He's a young guy to be starting like this, right? He doesn't got that old man strength yet going. And Bosa's going to be a problem out there. Bosa's going to be a problem.
Well, I'll say this, man. Going into last week, we thought it was a lock. Bosa was going to get 2+ sacks. The team would probably get 5. None of that happened. And maybe it was some of the weather. He did say that the footing was pretty bad for the get off, but it looks like it's supposed to rain again this week. And you guys are used to rain over there in the Northwest. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out.
I got to say, Niner fans got to chill, man. You got to chill on that game last week. I get that it's the Bears and all that, but that was a monsoon. That wasn't just like a little bit of rain coming down. That was buckets, and it leveled the playing field, as that kind of situation is going to do if you've got a blizzard on a field. It doesn't matter now if you're that extra bit of quickness. You can't lock in to get the quickness because you can't get your foot down to get it pressed right. I mean, it's gonna do that. And then you've got Chicago in their home stadium with a little bit of that opening game juice, enough to the good vibes flowing enough to kind of get them to push through. They make 1 or 2 little plays here or there. I think coming out of that game, if you're a Niner fan and making any kind of assessments or coming away with any sort of like hot takes as far as this is somehow indicative of us this season, would be highly premature. You guys are going to be much closer to what you were last year in every respect than what was showing up in that last week.
This is an interesting therapy session that's happening, everybody in the chat, because we now have a Seahawks fan telling us to chill. Just look yourselves in the mirror. Look, I'm just saying, no, this is a good thing. This is not you, Brandon. I'm telling everybody in the chat to look yourselves in the mirror, take a deep breath. It's going to be fine. It's fine. We're good. It's all good.
we play in rainy elements. That was like, that was a monsoon. That was like, is it going to hit landfill here? Is it going to get all the way to Chicago? Do we got to worry about the wave? Is that what's coming next? I watched the game. It was ridiculous watching those guys try to move around. It's just like the snow games where we're not great playing in monsoon. Like, you guys still in San Francisco, even if it rains this week, you're not going to be in another rainy game probably throughout the course of this year if you play the odds. So it's fine. It's just, it is what it is. But no, you guys are going to be fine when it all settles down. I know you
No,
guys.
there's a big difference between a drizzle and just a down. I mean, how many teams build themselves to be good in monsoons? Probably none. So there you go. And if you do, that's not the way to do it.
You're going to be losing a lot of other games if you're building your team for the monsoon games. That's a lot of L's you'll be taking across the board on that schedule.
Once every 3 years, you can go win a game that way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Why don't you walk me through this? And I'm leaving this very open to interpretation. You can take this however you want. But Seattle loses if.
Seattle loses if they don't run the ball more than they pass.
Interesting. Okay.
I was astonished this last week, man. We went 70% to 30% as a pass run rate against the Denver Broncos, who were top 5 last year against the pass, top 15 against the run. Odd as a game planning strategy. And I have some modicum of faith in Geno to be a good game manager. Like we're talking about with that next rookie quarterback that comes in, as you guys have seen with Garoppolo, who's limited in his respects. You don't need the best of the best to be a game manager. You need him not to make the big mistake. And then you need him to be able to move the chains. They don't need to be a playmaker even. It'd be great to have that stuff. And he can do that. But if you're going to have this guy throwing 35, 40 times a game, I'm going to get worried with it. I think that's a little bit too many attempts. Keep him in 25 to 30, then he can be, I think, all right. And last week, I think Penny had 12 runs. But you got to worry about Penny, man. He's legitimately in that place he was last year. He almost had a 50-yarder in this game that was called back on a BS. I'll let you make this call as a Niner fan. If I'm as an offensive lineman blocking a guy and I've got I'm up in the chest plate here, and that's where it's at. And yes, there's a grab up on the chest plate here, but I don't get wide. I don't get to the neck. That's a clean block, right? On a running play?
100%. 100%.
Okay, so he had a 50-yarder call back in that last game, which would have put him well over 100 yards on 13 carries in this last game. He's a problem to definitely be worried about in this respective things. But that's where it's going to come down to. We've got to be able to work Penny. We've got to be able to, I think, kind of, limit where you got with Geno to a degree on what you're doing with him. I just don't want to I love what he did last week, but at the same point in time, this is a team that lives and dies by run just like you guys do. That's how we need to win football games.
Yeah, 100%. All things are possible, says Fields did fine in the rain, no excuses. Trey did fine too, but neither of them did amazing things, right? Like they were both sub 50% completion. They had moments, but Fields also threw 3 should-be picks, right? And sometimes the defense comes up with it, and sometimes they don't. So that game, it could have gone either way. But I hear you.
logically walk through it where you go, okay, let's just say, okay, we've got our greatest players are awful when it's a complete downpour of rain. But they lose their complete skill set in those situations. Just accept that as a reality. What would that mean then and inform you upon what you would do differently with your roster?
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to ask you about this too. So Troy Aikman brought this up, and I actually did start to notice it once he brought it up on the Gamecast. He said that Geno Smith tends to drop back in the pocket when it gets muddy instead of getting up and climbing in the pocket. Have you noticed this in the past? I didn't catch it really last year, but once he said it, I was like, yeah, he kind of does drop back instead of moving up in the pocket. Have you noticed this?
Well, you play behind Russell Wilson for 3 years, you're going to pick up some bad habits.
So true. It's so true.
He'll even do the pirouette. If you guys might see it, he's done it last year a couple of times where he does out the back of the pocket, then does the backwards pirouette move as he's moving. And you go, really, Geno? Really?
What do you think you are, Tony Romo?
Oh, it's the Tony Romo. It's the Tony Romo backwards turn pirouette move. But he picked up from Russ, who did that for years. And I never saw him do that with the New York Jets. Geno was not that guy with the Jets. He had some moments to climb in the pocket last week, but you're right. I think I noticed it last year when he was in for a little short spell of 4 or 5 games. There's definitely some Russellness that has, for good or bad, that has, dripped off onto Geno.
That's fair. Yeah, listen, a guy that we just talked about, somebody had brought up in the chat was Fields. He's fantastic at it, right? You want Fields doing it. I don't know if you want Geno Smith doing it.
No, yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. Seattle wins if
they stop the 49er running game. I think this is a game that comes down to running. These are two teams that are philosophically driven by their running game. And if we stop your running game and turn Trey Lance into a passer in this game, can I say that to any Niner fan and they can look at me in the face with a lot of confidence and believe you walk away with a win if we can do that?
No.
And so I know it's a little boring because it's just the inverse of my first answer, but this is the two teams that are playing this week. We're the unusual. We are the unicorns in this sport. Everyone else is trying to throw the ball at a higher rate than they're trying to run it. Everybody else is trying to find a way to work in the passing attack. We're trying to still establish the run and the toughness and play to defense and play great special teams and be those old school kind of teams in their thing. And I think it can work, frankly. I don't think you have to be just this one way to go and slay the beast and get that Lombardi. You got to commit to it. You got to know who you are. If you're going to be in that lane, stay in that lane. Don't decide a couple games, well, now we're going to be pass happy because we're going to try this out. No, stick to who you are and what you are. So yeah, I think stopping the run is going to be big. It's going to be huge. And to a lesser degree, that interior line, if we can attack what you guys have there, because I think you guys will be okay at the edges, and then how you guys hit us in that outside zone, like I was saying with Taylor and whatnot. Those two things specifically, I think, are going to really be the measurement for us in this game.
Yeah, I think Debo attacking Taylor is probably a good bet.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it's a diagnosed problem for him too, right? So it's not just an issue of he's a little light in the pants as far as setting the edge. It's also the fact that he has some issues with sometimes recognizing what's going on in the play. So he can get bought in on the cheese on play action and take a false step. And then, he's an outside linebacker now. He's not a down lineman. So he's got to clear the flat route at times if it's on play action to his side on the backside. And what happens is he'll take the cheese and just stay on the run play, take too many false steps, can't get back to the flat route. Well, the same thing's true with your Debo Samuel situation where he's coming on that route and he's locked in on, let's say, maybe inside zone. And now you hit him with this and he takes 1-2 steps into that direction. This is the new blocking scheme that's so beautiful about the NFL. It's not about mano a mano anymore. It's about body positioning and catching a guy in the wrong, where they get 1 or 2 steps in the wrong direction and you're toast.
How does Jamal Adams being out impact your ability to stop the run? I mean, Jamal Adams, the one thing that has always been said about him is he's like a linebacker, right? Get him around the line of scrimmage and he's a monster. And he's improved a lot, actually, I think, in coverage. I want to give him credit for that. But now he's out, and I don't know what you guys have behind him. How does that impact your ability to stop the run, you think?
It's annoying, frankly. We had a guy we released at the end of preseason by the name of Marquise Blair, who was a former second-round pick, who had really some bad luck with injury where it wasn't his fault. Like he had a torn ACL where KJ Wright just kneecapped him on a play where the play was long dead, tackle was over, and KJ just comes rolling in from off screen and hits him in the knee. And it's like it tore his ACL and caused some health problems. Finally back up and running. I watched the tape on the All-22, thought he looked pretty solid. He's out. Now you lose Jamal. You don't have a good backup option. That was your real viable backup option. The guys that we have here are okay. You made these defensive changes this offseason in order to accommodate Jamal Adams, in order to better get more out of that trade, in order to better not, you had been put, like I told you before, what they were doing before is cover 3 and cover 2. Well, does that seem like a smart way to use Jamal Adams, is having him as a cover 2 safety? Doesn't that seem kind of weird that you're having a guy going backwards who's at his best going forward? So they finally made the adaptations this offseason to have him getting back to going forward, and literally on a play where he's blitzing Russell Wilson and about to get almost a sack on him, has a freakish injury, and all of his injuries have been different here. It's been shoulders, and he's got fingers fused, and he's pulled his groin and now torn this quad. So it's been all different stuff. It's going to hurt. And you guys are going to do better against us in the run game with him out. You're right. He's a plus. He's not just a plus safety run defender. He's probably a top 5 run defender as a safety, at least. And so losing that is going to hurt. We did a good job of stopping the run last year when he was in there. So you're going to have to overcome it, man. That's why I do say it is such a key point to it. And we're doing some weird things. If you want to look for some oddity in us, maybe you've got an explanation for me. We're running a weird hybridized 3-4. So you're supposed to bring a 3-4 defense in with a Vic Fangio scheme. It's just a pure 3-4 is what it is. You'll run 3-3-5 stuff on the back end, but we're running 2 defensive tackles as 1 techs, basically, right? Okay. So they're shaded you got them shaded between the guard and the center on one side, guard and the center on the other side. Then you have outside linebackers, and it's a 4-man front. Can you explain that to me? Does that, I can't make any sense of this, because what happens is you end up in a wide 9 with the outside linebackers, right?
Are they hands in the dirt, or are they standing up?
Standing up. And they're wide 9. So they're outside the shoulder of the tackles. So can you see where the issue lies in this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I've got a 1 tech here on almost with the center. And then I got this guy on the outside in wide 9. that's a pretty wide lane to run through naturally, and that's going to be very hard for any
especially
defenders there.
Especially for a Shanahan offense that's predicated on getting you to move one way and cutting back. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
I saw in the preseason, I saw a lot of it this last week against Denver. And I don't know what to make of it exactly. It's like a science experiment I'm watching play on the football field. And it's just, but that's, I think, a little bit of why Denver on top, they had their success with run the ball in that game when they did was like, I don't know that's a tough ask of your guys. That's like, I don't know what you're accomplishing with that. I guess you think you're getting better pass rush because you have your two guys a little further outside with your outside linebackers. That gives them a little bit better opportunity to use their speed and quickness, but you're leaving a wall to just walk up the field on your linebackers at the second level at that point and be and double teams are easy as hell to lay, right? Because then you lay a double team and you got another guy there who's got his guy pressed out, and that'll be a thing. If we run that, you guys are Shanahan's gonna eat that. That's giving him pie all day long.
That's an interesting look. I'll have to check that out. I guess the only thing I can think of is if you have Adams, he really can clean up a lot. But now that he's not in, if you continue to run that, I feel like that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, and it's just weird with it's the Fangio scheme is based on being a gap and a half scheme. So it's a gap and a half.
That's 2 1s.
Right. And so you got to have responsibility based. And so it can't be just Adams has got to clean it up. He's got a gap responsibility pre-play that he's got to get to. So it can't be, well, here's the last line to defend. No, I got to get, everybody's got to fit there. Yeah, that's the point of us then having the advantage of a 3-3-5, like where we can get away with that and still be effective in stopping the run because of the fact that we have every guy filling a gap if it is a running play. So it does make it tougher in that respect, I think.
I got to bring this up because now this actually becomes even more interesting. And I can't find, hold on. I think it's right up here. Oh yeah. Hold on. All right. Okay. Viet says, does stopping the run include Lance as well? And just real quick, based off of what you said, I mean, the misdirection that the 49ers can run with Debo and Lance and whoever the running back is, man, that sounds so easy for the 49ers. So I got to imagine that it does include Lance, but in your opinion, does it include Lance as well?
100% it includes Lance. Yeah, absolutely. And to give some Niners some hope, not hope, but to give, again, I got to give ground to where ground is at. Why we've had an advantage over you guys over the last few years. I know many Niner fans think it's simply the Russell Wilson magic, but as you and I talked about last year with the rock, paper, scissors situation as it pertained to the Rams, Seahawks, and 49ers, it's not just about randomness. It's also about how the teams play each other and how their philosophy is. The 4-3 under defense, but which was a de facto 5 defensive linemen down in front of you because that linebacker, they always had a defensive end like Bruce Irvin or Taylor last year. So you're getting a 5-man front. Shanahan's run scheme's not going to really have a good time against the 5-man front, right? But then you go to that 3-3-5, right? Oh, you're going to give Shanahan a 6-man box to deal with? Yeah, I think he can run against that.
Yeah.
We're now giving that advantage up. So not only do we give the Russell out, right? We gave the Russell advantage up. We don't got that against you this year. We also are losing against now the 4-3 under stuff that we had, which was more 2-gapping too, which of course, then it's a more of a patient approach. You're not going to kill us with misdirection as much now because we can get to either gap. Whereas the gap and a half, it's a lot more of maybe if you can get back to the gap, that'd be great. I mean, just jump the gap, but if you can get back there, that'd be cool too. It's kind of the gap and a half makes me laugh. It's a hilarious concept. It makes it really tough on defensive linemen. So you want me to 2-gap? No. So you want me to 1-gap?
No.
You want
gap and a half
in between? Yes. So I just go with the man then? No. It's got to be a concept when they're explaining it to him. Like, really? This isn't hard enough on me. I got pre-snap motion, keep my eyes, remember my indicators, check the offensive lineman's hands if it's pressed, look at the backfield, see his eye. And then you got me to factor this in as well. That I got to get back to the gap after I'm attacking one other gap. And but hey, that defense has gotten away with it. It works.
So, okay. Is it at all possible that you saw it during the preseason and all those things because it was meant for when you play Russell Wilson and then also maybe when you play a Kyler Murray type, and then they will not get back to, obviously you're running a completely different defense. You're not going to get back to what you did so well against the Niners, but go back to more of a traditional 3-4 potentially. Like, do you see that at all as a possibility, or you think this is it?
No, it is a possibility because they have run 3-4. They've not just been running this stuff. It's just that through preseason and in this last game, it's been a predominant amount of that weird wonky 4-man front that I described. And so it's just that I've seen so much of it. But you're right, it absolutely could be. For instance, you run the 4-man front, now you have a man to spy the quarterback. So you have an extra guy in space to kind of help things out there. And that would make a ton of sense if that was the case. And I would laud them because that's what I wanted this season to be, is that I wanted them this season, like this game, in my opinion, I'd come back out and I would throw the Niners off. I'd run 4-3 in this game. You haven't seen it on tape. You're expecting the 3-4. We know that the Fangio scheme is a scheme that Shanahan's scheme works pretty well up against by how he does against the Rams. The one thing I do want to say on pushing back with that, though, with Wilson and using him, Wilson's had all of his troubles this year. Mainly he's had his troubles with him playing that Vic Fangio cover 2 shell scheme. That's been the thing that's given him those troubles. Yeah, so odd that they didn't utilize it. But that's what I would run against your Niners this week if they want to stay. They said they were going to be hybridized and we're going to run this and there'll be some of the old elements in there. This would be the week I would run that against this Niners. You got the personnel to do it. But if you see that 4-man box with the 2 outside, like, it's going to be a long day for
See, now I'm going to be looking for it for sure because I didn't really pay attention to it last week. But yeah, I'm definitely be looking for it. For sure. Matthew says, Jesse, how dare you? He didn't write back. He's talking about Geno Smith. That was a good line by Geno. I got to give him credit on that one. It was a very good line.
Yeah. He's been good. He's accommodated himself really nicely for the situation he's put in here with taking over for Russ. And again, a lot of the fan base was not in favor of him. A lot of them wanted to see Drew Lock. So he's done really well with that. I've been impressed by Geno.
49ers Daddy says, great show. 49ers 28, Seahawks 13. Not one of the 6 W's. All right, we'll see. That's a big scoring margin. We'll see. Flav says, although I can understand why Martz feels that way about Trey, I thought it was a little harsh. What was weird to me about that Martz thing is that 3 days earlier he said it was the right decision to play Trey, but I digress. And then he came back and said, I never believed in him or liked anything he did. It's like, well, 3 days ago you were fine with it. Not going to give up hope that he can be solid in 2 years.
What the trade? I'm gonna walk Niner back on these things, like the Trey Lance worry by the Niners, the hand wringing, the pearl clutching. The kid's going to be good. I think give him some time. And again, he's youngest. I'm sure you've said this over and over. I know that's why you're probably shaking your head. You probably had to say, I've been in that same point where you say something ad nauseum on your channel. Like, please, folks, I'm telling you the truth. This is really the way it is. He came in as the youngest quarterback of that bunch. He hadn't played a whole season prior to that. You know, he's now they put him in last year for a cup of coffee, and he was going to be young and he's going to be green. He's going to take some time, but to make some final assessment on a kid who's 22 years old right now, and to say that's, what he is off of this, that's to me, so we don't give any room for development. So we don't allow maturation to occur. So Garoppolo sat 3-4 years behind Brady before he played. Right. Yep. Am I mistaken? I'm still as on pro Lance board as I was before. I haven't wavered. You remember I told you how he was my number 2 quarterback on the board. I'm still looking pretty good in that respect. Fields didn't light the world on fire yesterday or last week. He didn't light the world on fire last season. And Mac Jones, like we talked about, was topped out. You could have made the argument Mac was maybe the better call for you for a more pro-ready guy, but he's topped out. He ain't going to a higher level. He isn't. I think it will still be proven in retrospect that that's the right pick. Now, it might take a couple more years than it should with where you guys are in your window, and that's a whole nother argument for the 49er fan base. But as far as him being a talented kid with a lot of potential still, and the story is not told whatsoever here, absolutely. Absolutely.
Gosh, I feel like I'm in bizarro world over here, chat. Like, are you really? Again, we got the Seahawks fan telling us exactly the way that it is, and you don't want to hear it from me. Hopefully, maybe you'll hear it from him. This is crazy. Thank you so much for that, by the way.
I got no dog in this fight. It's in my best interest to sell you guys. Oh, you guys swung 3 first-round picks. I would love nothing more to sit here and just twist the knife in the back of Jay over there. Go, oh, how many picks? How many picks? How was that last draft, buddy? How'd that feel? No, if it's the right selection, it's the right selection. And again, if you want to give me the argument that you think the Mac Jones was the more pro-ready, put him in Shanahan's this offense right now. He's an upgrade over Garoppolo, even if just by this much. even by just a hair. And that's that little bit of hair. That's that one extra Super Bowl throw that we needed to get ourselves a Super Bowl title. So be it. You could bring me over on that argument, but if we're just specifically talking about this kid's potential and what he could become down the road and where I still see him going, and understanding again how young he is, if you got a 24-year-old prospect coming out, go ahead and tell me the die is cast. You get a guy that's 2021 coming out, give him a little bit more time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I appreciate it. Net J Lee says, great guest, Jesse. Bring him back. He'll be back. Listen, we play the Seahawks twice. So the lucky thing is we've got a great guest and we get to see him twice because we play the Seahawks twice. So yes, he'll be back for sure.
100%. 100%. All
right, let's get into it. Score prediction. Who wins this game? What is the final score?
I'll go 21-13 Niners.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen here is that one of the upshots, unfortunately, fortunately for the Niners here, of having your fan base freak out over week one, of nationally being called to bear across the board, is that's going to usually get the players pretty well galvanized to get everybody on board for the corresponding week. It might not last 3-4 weeks of keeping that same energy, but you're going to bring that energy usually the week after a loss like that, where this is a prideful bunch. It's a good bunch. They're not going to, come out there, I think, and give anything less than absolute best effort. And it's a little more talented team than where we're at right now. Again, you guys are in the elite phase of things. We're trying to move out of rebuild to ascent, in between elite. So we're trying to get to that. So we're quite a few rungs still away from you. And again, short week for us, Monday Night Football as well. So a little bit of a lesser time period for us. Jamal Adams down, one less run defender. I think it does kind of add up to probably a 7-point loss in this game.
I think that's a very fair take. I've got to imagine that when you went into the season saying 7 wins, this was probably one that you chalked up as a loss. Now, I'll be curious. I don't want to hear it now, but I've got to imagine that, knowing this is a division game, that you might have this series split. So we'll see later in the season when we meet back up. But that being said, I'm with you. I do think the 49ers win. I think, just like I tried to say last week, I think this game is closer than what a lot of people want to think that it might be. I think the 49ers win this game.
Vegas is giving you almost 10 points. So Vegas is on board with this too. I mean, 10 points is a lot.
Yeah, 10 is a lot to lay in the NFL. I'm always leery of it. They were big favorites last week too, and we saw how that played out. I'm going to go 24 to 17 Niners. I don't think they cover, but I do think they win for sure.
Yeah, it feels about right. I mean, it just feels right in that area of things of where this one will go this week for sure.
Absolutely.
Brandon, are you getting Kittle back?
He's iffy. He didn't practice today. We'll look at that practice report for tomorrow and Friday. Kittle's also the type that doesn't necessarily have to practice, but every time I remember him being injured and he didn't practice, he doesn't seem to play. So he's going to have to get in Thursday or Friday. They said he's a lot better off this week than he was last week, but groins and hamstrings and those types of things can linger. So you got to be careful with that. I mean, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. So I would love to have him out there for sure, but if it's not the right decision, it's just not the right decision.
Yeah, I think he has a big effect if he is out there. I think he does help out on at least, maybe not a lot of catches, but enough catches to be key catches at key times. So that will be interesting to see how that part plays out, because he's definitely a guy that worries me on where for us playing defensively goes. But we'll have to, usually if they don't get to Wednesday practices, most of the time can be kind of a death knell on that. They have to get to Wednesday, usually at least get through the walkthrough to be in.
Yeah, and listen, Shanahan's going to play him as questionable no matter what. So we're not going to know until Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just who Shanahan is. I mean, last week he's like, yeah, he still might play. You never know. He wasn't close to even playing, it sounds like, in hindsight. So before you get out of here, we were talking backstage a little bit. You wanted to possibly bring up some things from last year when we did the podcast. Is there anything in particular that you want to talk about?
So I'm curious on this, because one of the big things we had some back and forth on, and it was like a slight disagreement, but we had a little bit of a disagreement on, was the quarterback situation last year for you guys.
Yeah.
And because I was really feeling for the Niners when you got in the playoffs, because this was just going through my mind, if you remember what I wanted to do with this. And you had, I think, from the jump, saying, let's get Lance in there. Let's let him roll from the rip. Let's go. And I was more of, remember, I said what I would do is the Kaepernick plan of old. I would have my Alex Smith out there, Garoppolo out there for a majority of the season, and then bring back Lance, who now nobody's got any game plan on. I can run a whole bunch of gadgety stuff. Ain't nobody gonna be ready for it. Nobody's seen it. And now all of a sudden I maybe have some instant injection of offense as I go to the playoffs. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm watching it. We get the playoffs, and I'm watching those first two games where Garoppolo's doing jack diddly dandy crap in the first half and looking pathetic doing so, quite frankly. And I'm going, really? Trey can't do better than this? He can't. You couldn't run read option with him like just like Kaepernick back in the day. You beat Green Bay with running Kaepernick got a read option a million times. Like did multiple times. Yeah, I know it's a different defense. I know it's a different time, but I'm just in there going, really? He's not ready to even a point. Like you just can't. Like Garoppolo is giving you nothing. 0 points. Zero. He ain't moving drives. He ain't making any throws. He looks that arm looks weaker than ever. Right? That thing looked as powder puffed as could be in that game. I couldn't believe it. Am I off on that, or would you think, in looking back on it with that in retrospect, that maybe that would have been a better, I mean, it would have been better, but just a different plan than what they took, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I still am bullish that they should have played him from the jump. I didn't look at that team and say, man, this team is going to win the Super Bowl this year if you run with Garoppolo all year. Now, they were close. I almost had to eat crow on that. But I felt like you were kicking the can down the road in the development. And although players can develop sitting, I'm not saying he got zero development by sitting, but he himself said that the weeks that he developed most were the weeks that he was the starter. Then you had Peyton Manning come out just a couple weeks ago and talk about how he said that 13-3 season in year 2 doesn't happen if he doesn't take his lumps in year 1 being the starter all year. And his brother Eli backing that up and saying, yes, I sat behind a Hall of Famer in Kurt Warner for 10 games, but those 6 games that I started, I learned way more than the 10 that I sat. So for me, I still would have done that. However, once it got so far in the season, I said, listen, it's too late. Like you got to ride with Garoppolo. But I will say this, I agree with you, especially in that Green Bay game where things got so stagnant for a while and it was cold weather. Yeah. That was the time. You don't have to have him come in and throw the ball a ton or whatever, but I think just mixing it up with some read option, which he certainly could have done, would have been a nice little throw in every once in a while. Absolutely. I agree with that. Yes.
Work the read option off of the Debo plays as opposed to just having to hand the ball to Debo. He's all I got. He's all I got. He's all we got. And it's like, it became so predictable and going like, I know that he wasn't going to save the day. I didn't think he was going to come in and well, he hasn't played all year and he's going to be just awesome. But I did think there's that element of his legs coming in, the big arm, the sense of like, hey, I just, let's let her rip here, kid. You don't have anything built up. They don't know what they're going to get. They're not going to be prepared for you. And you're talking about a small stretch of games just to, kind of see what kind of happens. So I still, again, he's going to develop fine, but that was the interesting. And just watching those playoffs was like, Jesse somewhere probably just, lamenting, just come on, this can't be worse than this.
No, I was with you. And especially, I mean, listen, this is a kid that grew up in Minnesota, small town in Minnesota, went to North Dakota State. He's used to that weather. And we saw it last week. I mean, the elements were terrible. His arm cut through all of it early on before it just became crazy. So, I mean, he's got, that's one thing he certainly has is that arm strength, and he could have cut through the elements. Yeah, it would have been nice to get in a couple mixed plays for sure. 100%. I agree.
How, just a couple questions I had for you on this. How's the man corner situation going?
Man, it's not. it's not. So the 49ers, okay. I know we talked about this last year. We thought that Verrett, I said that if Verrett hadn't got injured, I thought that they were going to be more of a cover 1 team.
I said he was going to be injured.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Or cover 2 man. And the 49ers continued to draft and sign man corners and then not play a lot of man. It is the strangest thing I've ever seen. It worked really well for them last week. Now, I will say this. Even though they played zone, it was a lot of match zone, which is still, kind of a man concept. So they are mixing it in. I don't know how much Jimmy Ward not playing has to be a part of this, but a big part of the reason why I was really bullish on the 49ers going into the season is you've got a really good pass rush. Last year, they were getting torched down the stretch in 3rd down and long. They were able to hold teams on 1st and 2nd down, and then 3rd down and long, because they were playing so far back.
Yeah.
They were just getting torched, and the defensive line was not getting home on a regular basis. I figured, okay, you've got a great pass rush. Third down and long is those situations where they're going to create a lot of turnovers because they're going to come up, play man bump coverage, and allow those pass rushers to get home. Interestingly enough, third down and long is where they got the interception last week, but it wasn't because they played man. So we'll see about that. They certainly should be playing more man, I believe.
It takes that gutsiness because you do go, man, you are opening yourself up and you got to trust your guys. And that's what it takes my coaching staff to say, okay, we trust them. We're going to let them go on this. But I agree. I think it'd be a good combination with that pass rush that you guys have to be able to match it up with some guys running man, a little stickier in coverage, not letting those routes. Nothing worse is there than watching the guys in off coverage on third down. My team does it too. Off coverage, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. They run a little in-cutting route at 5-6 yards. The guy goes to make a break on the ball, but he's playing the deep. That's his responsibility on it is he's got to stay deep. And those guys usually cannot do the two things at once, which is stay deep, but then cut at the perfect time. If it's an in-cutting on the top, they're going to want to just, coach says, I can't get beat deep. Coach says, don't get me deep. And that just becomes the thing in their head. You see it very often. That's what separates, I think, some of those zone corners, the really good ones from the all right ones, is the ones that can make that determination, have the balls to say, I'm going to go get this. I recognize the route combo. I've seen my tape. I know what to look for. But I hate it.
That's how you get killed by Cooper Kupp repeatedly. And I'm sure you've seen it because we certainly have.
Yeah. Well, what they're doing with that, and the Rams this is their bread and butter now more than ever. I mean, they're leaning into it as much as those damn flood zone concepts. Excuse my French, but it's you have zone coverage. Everybody's in zone. So that first guy goes through that zone defender space and he wants to pick him up. He does not want to let him go. It's like a first love, man. He's like, no, I can't quit you. I can't quit you up the field. And then here comes Cooper. I can't quit you. I love you so much. And the Cooper's like, I'm right here. I love you so much. I just want to stay with you forever. And then Cooper's like, I'm wide open. And they do that play after play. It drives me crazy. I watched it was the Rams game in Seattle last year, watching all 22 of that, where they're just running these concepts and the guys are just right behind each other, like they're in line. Like they're in line running routes, just, you get him and then I'll sit down and there's no adjustment. There's nothing you can do. It's like, well, I got to take him a little bit. Oh no, you got to get off of him and go there. Well, when do I go off of him? When you feel, you're about to leave the zone. Okay. So I got to, recognize my zone awareness as I'm covering one man to flop back to it's a lot to ask on guys in the zone.
Yeah. He stresses a lot of people. Flav says, as a 49er fan, I really like Geno for you guys too. I think that's going back to your Lance comment where you said you like Lance for us. Flav's a big Jimmy guy, so there's some context there for you.
Oh, okay, no, I get it. Hey, I like Jimmy. I like Jimmy.
I don't. Matthew Sanders says, thanks for coming. It's good to know that I thought I hated the Seahawks, but turns out, in fact, I just hate Russ and don't mind crazy Pete Carroll. Yeah, there you go. We all learned a little something tonight.
Yeah, Russ definitely has lost a lot of that's been a sentiment within the Seahawks fan base as well. You guys you saw us in the stadium booing him, and there's definitely a turning of the worm in that situation is how that all kind of settled out.
I get it. Like, anytime a player wants out, that's always rough. But man, I feel like I thought Russ was bulletproof, man. He's worked so hard to get that perfect image and do the things he did. I thought for sure that they would never turn on Russ, but man, I was wrong.
Well, because it comes back to being disingenuous. And, another thing I got hammered on for a year and a half, I don't know if we talked about last year, was the worry that Russell would be potentially leaving and that he was setting that groundwork down. And I got, it was even leading into the off season where I said, this is coming, and people I'd get inflamed on my chat for saying it. They got so pissed at me, and I would try to explain it as part of you mentioned going for it. Imagine the thought process of where you are right now, wishing the Niners were doing more of going for it, put more guaranteed money out there, less bonus money, because that's the Rams are doing, is they're playing more to the guarantee, the bonus. Guarantee lets you push it out beyond 4 years. So let's go for it. Imagine that, though, with an extra added layer of you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback in the middle of his prime with that as well. The roster's here, the quarterback's ready to go, let's go. And you're not getting that same kind of aggression. So that's what was also just driving me so much but I can't deny, as much as I did want to keep Russ here, he burned bridges on his way out the door. I'm getting hit too much. I want say over the next coaching staff. I want say in personnel decisions. I want say in playmaking. I also then want to be paid the highest quarterback every single time. Every 4 years get re-upped. Every 4 years get re-upped. He just got re-upped with 2 years left on his deal here to be paid $49 million a year. I'm sure it's not about the money though. You know, his image is it's
No,
not
not
about,
at
it's
all.
not, no,
Not at all about the money.
it's not the money.
Which is crazy because this is what guys like him and Rodgers completely missed when they went after the whole Tom Brady blueprint, which is we want say, we want this, we want that, we want to dictate everything. They missed the part where Tom Brady constantly took pay cuts so that they could fit those contracts in to make it work. Somehow that went over both of their heads, and
they turned into Ray Charles. All of a sudden, they're just like, "What? What do you mean? Yeah, I don't know." All of a sudden, I agree. They did everything else. They went line item by line item. Okay, create a brand, create a logo, get get the hot one, and they go down the line. And then they get to this one part here where they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to." This is like a buffet, right? I can go. I want that. I don't want that one's. No, that one's Nicky. I don't like that one. And just it pisses me off because they don't ever get held account to it. They play dumb like they're not what me taking 55, 60. No, it's gonna. We just need to drop better. That's what it drives me nuts because it not only does it backed up by Brady doing this, it's backed up by the data. And look at it, 30 years of data, and quarterbacks paid 15% or more of the cap, and the fact that they don't win Super Bowls. You can, outside of Tom Brady, of course, and even him again was taking it usually below that 15% mark where he was getting beneath. You saw Mahomes in his new contract of $500 million, and everybody's going, wow, $500 million. He gave the team a discount. The first 2 years of that deal were like 3.5% and 6% of the cap. By the third year, it was still only going up to like 12 or 13%.
Yeah.
He was aware of what was going on. And we had a year, quite literally in 1 year, where we had the only 2 quarterbacks taking a discount in the sport were the 2 quarterbacks that were playing in the Super Bowl. Only 2 quarterbacks taking a little less than what they could possibly get were playing in the Super Bowl. But you hear, like I get from the Russell Wilson backers on it, oh, that's happenstance. They wouldn't have spent the money right anyway. But it would have helped. It would have helped.
How do you know they wouldn't have spent the money right? You don't know until you give them a chance to. That's crazy.
I hate it, but I've had fights and I've gone back and forth on this with those folks on that where they don't like hearing it, but I'm sorry. It's the truth. You're going to ask for all this money. What Russ was going to ask for next year was $60 million a year. He signed for 49 now because it's now. Yeah. This is a year from now. It's going to be 60. That's what it was going to cost the Seahawks. That was the final thing. There was already some things leading up to the push. That's the final push of the trade. You want to pay 35-year-old Russell Wilson $60 million a year, even as much as he's beat your Niners up? Would you really want to do that? Would you really feel comfortable with your Niner team doing that?
No, absolutely not.
And so it's
so much money.
So much money. And he's already had 2 major contracts. Endorsement deals up the wazoo. He'll have endorsement deals until the end of time. More money to spend than anybody. I know he wants to own a team and be a billionaire, and they all got that. But this is where we come to on this. And I kind of want to know your thoughts on this. I'm over the age of the diva quarterback. I'm over it. I'm done with it. And what I mean by that, we had the age of the diva receiver. You had one there in San Francisco for years in Terrell Owens. The diva receiver was a big thing. Oh, I'm bigger than everything. I'm bigger than the sport. I'm going to make all this noise. I'm going to tear up locker rooms. I'm going to call my quarterback gay and blow this locker room apart. Well, now we're in the age of diva quarterbacks. I, my, me. What are you doing for me? Are you giving me the money? Are you giving me all the things offensively? Are you making sure I got the right coach that I want here? Is it all being accommodated to me? This is a team sport. This is still a team sport. And the fact that we've gotten to this place, I'm done with it. I'm happy to go with rookie quarterback, blow them through and get the next one in here and build around a team. Build the super team, bring the guy in on the rookie deal, cheap rookie deal, and roll them on through as far as I'm concerned. And I'll take my chances. Some smart forward-thinking team is going to take this trek of it, and they're going to have success. And the second that one does, all of the rest will hitch their wagons to it, and you'll see it move and force in an entirely different way. We're going to reach a point on this with those contracts where they go, okay, quarterbacks matter, but this is getting ridiculous. Kyler Murray, Cardinals feel good about that contract today. I know we had a double X point weekend with Call of Duty last week, but you've heard that, right? You heard that.
The thing is that you're right, because Mahomes did it right? Mm-hmm. He took the team friendly, but he's still getting paid. There's, it's all about signing bonuses and where you work and the money and all those other things. Tom Brady did the same thing. Those guys continue to win. And then what you had was Aaron Rodgers is probably the biggest diva quarterback there is. I mean, if there's a dictionary picture of diva quarterback and definition, Aaron Rodgers is poster child. And so, he's done the opposite. And then you had the Browns being super desperate with the Deshaun Watson thing. And so now it's the whole market's just out of whack,
Yeah.
And so it's tough because these players deserve this money. Like, right, you got billionaires making a lot of money, a ton of revenue. It should be going to the players, right?
Yeah.
But how you spread that out across your players is where the trick comes in. And if you are paying a quarterback X amount of dollars, Steve Young's the only one to do it over, I think you said 15, but I think it's actually like 13.5%.
Yeah.
And that was year one of the salary cap. Steve Young's the only one to win a Super Bowl with those things going on. I don't know. It's tough. Unless every quarterback in the league is just getting paid like crazy to level the playing field, I gotta agree, man. Going cheap at quarterback or cutting salary somewhere is probably the way to go. As long as you're getting talent with that cheap quarterback, you can't have a bum that's cheap and win either. So that's
also,
it's hard.
Also, that you have a team constructed the way your Niners or my Seahawks team is constructed, right? That's the key point of this as well. Because if I have a high volume passing attack, probably don't want my rookie. I'm not trying to get the most out of my rookie quarterback at that point because he's probably not going to be ready to have a high volume attack outside of guys like Joe Burrow or what. There's some outliers here, but you don't want to count on that being the rule of thumb with the guy you're drafting being able to do that. They need to usually have 4 years in the league before they're truly ready to, like Russell was a game manager through his first couple of years, and then he truly became a difference maker, top 3 quarterback for a couple year period there. So you want the game manager, you want the super team around him, you want the offensive line in place in front of him so he doesn't develop bad habits and start seeing ghosts and get himself, in trouble as far as that goes. And I think that that's part of it as well. It's not just simply you getting a quarterback it's the type of quarterback you're looking for and what you're needing them to do within the context of the offense that also matters in that approach.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it, man. There really is. It's interesting because and that's what makes the NFL cool, right? That is why I do like having a salary cap, because you can go so many different directions with it, and it makes it competitive and it makes it interesting. And sometimes a team makes the right move and sometimes they don't, and then they got to blow it up and rebuild. And that's why the NFL is so great. Like, they've figured that portion out. They really
100%. You don't run into that NBA stuff or Major League Baseball runs into where you're stuck and you're going to be stuck for years. It's part of why I think you would advocate and I'd advocate for going for it when you're in that elite window, because if you do overstep your bounds, if you do make a variety of mistakes, you can always go back to square one and get the rebuild going and turn it back really quickly. All it takes is the commitment to the rebuild at that point. That's all that, like we've done this off season, just takes the commitment. Then you can get this turned back around. So all the more reasons to go for it. And, why we'd like to see it more when they're in that mode. It's Stafford again, why the Rams fit as much room as they did. He did that them again this year for them, where he in that new contract lowered down that first year hit so far and how he had the money spread out, allowed them to re-sign Donald, allowed them to re-sign Cooper Kupp, allowed them to bring in Allen Robinson, allowed them to bring in Bobby Wagner. That's what facilitated those moves.
Yeah, it's something that you would think some of these quarterbacks would pick up on. It's an interesting way to look at it. Flav, we'll end on this. Flav says, Jess, surprisingly, I disagree with you for once. Yeah, this is the only disagreement we've had, Flav. I got the Niners 23-9 this week. Gino will have the worst QBR this week. Going to be very rough for him. Niners cover. Okay. Listen, I like your prediction better. I hope I'm wrong, right? Flav, I hope that I'm wrong and you're right. Trust me, I do. But yeah, anyways. Yeah,
it's in Vegas's best interest to get it right. Like, they're not ones that are going to just throw up random numbers. And if they throw 9.5 points up, they've got a feeling on this. A pretty good, I don't like to bet against Vegas.
No, Vegas wins most of the time.
House wins, right?
Yeah, they do. Let me say this real quick before we get out of here. Brandon, again, thank you so much. I really like doing these shows because I think that when you go fan base versus fan base, it's always just a bunch of craziness and yelling and just over the top. But getting on a show with somebody who is able to articulate things and talk through it, I think and I'm noticing this in the chat. They're like, wow, Seahawks fans aren't so bad, right? And not everybody is that way. And so I love that I'm able to bring people outside of our community forth, and so that our fans can be more educated on exactly what's about to happen, who the other team is, and hopefully in favor, go show you love. So here's how you can do that. Link to his channels in the description, and I'll encourage you this way all off season, or excuse me, all season. Whether you want to go there and troll him, or you want to go show him love, or you just want to check in on a rival from time to time, go subscribe to his channel. I'm sure he'll take all of you, regardless of what you want to bring to the table. And you can do that by checking the link in the description. We will do this again when the 49ers play. And I'll be curious to see how the 49ers and Seahawks are at that point. Again, Brandon here with Seahawks Nester. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
And my pleasure. I do want to give a props to the 49er fan base, because I don't know if it's since we did our show last year or just having a fair amount through my chat as I do my live streams, and they do come in quite a bit on that. And that you do have fan bases. I've got my fan base rankings of ones in toxicity that are problems. And it's, because what I really want to do, look, you're our biggest rival. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be moments we can't talk each other. At the end of the day, it's much better to have fun discussion like this, where we go back and forth on the X's and O's and how you can strategically go and counter. That's, to me, what draws me into football and makes me as much love it as anything else. And I really got to appreciate the fact those Niner fans, if some of you in your chat here now who've come in on my side of things, and by far the vast majority, I'm talking 95%, which in YouTube land is incredible, have been respectful, have been willing to engage within our chat. Maybe there's some disagreement, but it's just some lively back and forth stuff. So I always appreciate when we can go. I don't mind if you can troll, come and troll too. I'm not like anti that, but it is cool being able to come and have that talk. Cause like you said, when you get the different perspectives, it just widens out the view that much better. It just makes you understand things a little bit more than you did before, rather than getting this, I know what I know and we rule and you suck.
You know what though? I've grown this appreciation of, we all grow up the same way, right? We watch the ESPNs or the Fox, we listen to sports radio, we call in, we do those things. And as you kind of start to get into this game a little bit, you realize that you and your fans know more than the talking heads, right? Because that's all you're talking about. That's all you're looking at. That's what you breathe and sleep and eat. And so for me, my biggest thing is if you want to learn about another team, just like you come here and show me love, spread that love. Go out and find a Seahawks streamer or a Cowboys streamer or whatever it is that you're looking for. Those guys are going to know more about their team than anything that you're going to find from the national media. And I just love our community of content creators. And I know there are some really good ones in other communities. And I just love to shed light on that. So again, thank you for living up to the billing.
Hey, you too, man. You're doing great work over here, and you're just going to keep on growing on through. So it's awesome to see. I love seeing a fellow content creator doing the same kind of thing, coming up from the standpoint, because it's so much more funner than just let's throw poo at each other and talk like that. Again, there's room for that. That's fun sometimes too, but I like and enjoy so much more when we get into the depths of this stuff and just really can dive into the details and layers. That's the beautiful thing about football is, a casual fan can watch in this level, a more layered fan can watch it here, then even a more informed fan, and you start to really appreciate every layer the more you deep down, like a bite off of a really well-made sandwich.
100%. Brandon, thank you so much. Chat, thank you so much. Have a great night. And remember, Friday, weird show time for me. I'm always on at night, but Friday, it'll be 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to have JT O'Sullivan on the show, so do not miss that. We'll see you then. Peace.
Have a good one. Thank you for having me.